Here are 10 exploits that break Subnautica. Hi friends, and welcome back to 4546b. Subnautica has had a long history of game-breaking exploits and glitches, but the vast majority of instances you may know and love have been patched out over the past couple of years. Iconic glitches like the air pump launch and the super sea glide no longer work in the current version of the game. So instead, here are 10 useful or funny exploits that still work in the current patch. While swimming is great for your endorphin levels and your glutes, sometimes you just need to take a quick stroll to feel better about life. So what if I told you you could take a leisurely amble right along the seafloor without having to worry about your oxygen meter at all? There are several ways you can enter this state, but one of the easiest and most consistent ways just requires some kind of base piece like a multi-purpose room or an eye tube, and a handy habitat builder. From the inside of your chosen base piece, wedge yourself against any exterior edge and simply start to build a floor locker as close to your feet as possible. Ghost structures still have collisions in this game, so the hitbox of the locker will shove you through the hitbox of the base and put you outside while you're still in base mode. This may take a couple of tries to get the positioning correct, because if you try in a part of the base that's walls are too thick, you'll just end up kind of floating in the wall, but you can always deconstruct the locker and free yourself to try again. It works best in the corners of the multi-purpose room or on the long sides of an eye tube. Once you're outside, the game still considers you to be inside your base and gives you all of the physics and benefits associated with that. Namely that your oxygen bar is fixed and won't decrease, and also that enemies will ignore you. This group of gasopods that would normally have destroyed me by now seemingly don't care that I'm here, so long as I'm a mini sea treader. I couldn't even get Ted to notice me. The only downside is that you are stuck on the seafloor and don't have great verticality. You'll also take fall damage if you take a jump that's a little too big. However, standing outside in this state also allows you to build base pieces that are normally locked by being inside. So you can place down lockers outside your base right next to your grow beds, or a fabricator for funsies. You can even take this one step further by glitching yourself through the actual map and taking the fast pass down to the active lava zone, although your trip won't last too long given the aforementioned fall damage. To exit this state, either enter a vehicle or a base hatch, or just simply use the unstuck button in the pause menu, and you'll be returned back to normal old Riley. You go through a lot of batteries to power all of those nifty tools that allow you to experience Subnautica's vast underwater world, but there are very few things as irritating as running out of power in your habitat builder when you're in the middle of a massive project, especially when all you need is one dead battery and one full battery to achieve infinite power. Normally, when your tool runs out of power, it'll stop working and will display a small "no power" text on your screen, preventing you from using that tool until you change out the battery to one with some charge. However, instead of actually swapping your batteries and continuing to burn through charge, just let the empty battery do all of the heavy lifting for you. When the tool prompts you to change the power source, swap temporarily to your full battery and then back to the empty battery. Then hover over the full battery and exit out of the menu using a button like Escape instead of confirming the battery change. That ghosts the battery into the tool, making it think that you've replaced your battery when you really haven't, so you can continue building without interruptions. Note that every time you go through a hatch or change which tool you're using, you'll need to repeat this glitch to get the benefits again, so it's not exactly a wide-use permanent fix, but it can get you out of some sticky situations. Of course, you could also use your empty batteries to craft full power cells, or even get a full battery back by crafting a tool. But why waste resources when all you need to do is trick the game into thinking it has power in the first place? For whatever reason, the game really doesn't like it when you crash a full-speed Cyclops into a life pod, seeing as it takes offense to your actions and decides to fling you across the map at Mach 1. The practical applications of this are fairly limited as it's hard to guarantee your launch direction, but because many of the other known launch glitches have been patched out in previous versions, it's fun to know that there are still other ways you can go flying. It's genuinely as easy as just driving your Cyclops into your life pod while being as close to the surface as you can manage. As soon as you exit the driving position, you will be rocketed into the sky, achieving both considerable vertical and lateral fast travel. Combine this with some of the exploits we're going to cover later in this video, and you can yeet yourself into building a new base faster than your Seamoth could dream of. Your Cyclops will stay partially elevated at an angle when you return, but you can remedy that with a propulsion cannon or by just letting gravity slowly take its course. Or you can get on top of the life pod and maybe enter through the bottom hatch, unless they're still merged together into one, in which case you will get launched all over again, until your game crashes because it doesn't love the edge of the world like that. Similar to the previous flight glitch, this exploit will also send you flying to the furthest reaches of the map, but this time, your Cyclops gets to come with you. Or not with you, but on an adventure of its own to the ether. The method for achieving this effect is very similar to the first exploit I covered, except instead of using a locker inside a base piece, you'll want to use a vending machine inside of a Cyclops. Unlike the first exploit, we want to use one of the thicker parts of the Cyclops hull, because you don't want to be instantly teleported to the outside of your sub and fall to your death. You want your sub to become a rocket in its own right. I've found this works most consistently in the front left corner of the submarine, backing yourself into this seam where the front bubble meets the rest of the ship. Just like before, place the vending machine at your feet as close to yourself as you possibly can, and the instant you start building, both you and your Cyclops will be flung into the ether in opposite directions. Basically what happens is that your hitbox carries the momentum of you getting shoved out of place by the vending machine into the wall of the Cyclops, but your inertia was too great to stop, and instead you end up a few kilometers into the air. My best launch so far was about 5,200 meters away from my sub, and I'd be curious to hear if anyone can beat that record. Because who needs the Neptune rocket when you can have infinite ships and all of the flight time that you want? Right after leaving your life pod for the first time, you're probably going to want to pick up plenty of those fun resources lying around the seafloor, but Riley's pockets just aren't that big, and you may need to make a few hard choices about what resource to prioritize this trip. Or instead, you could remotely access the storage locker from your life pod just by opening your PDA, transferring your materials, and carrying about your merry way. This is super easy to pull off. In the life pod, just orient yourself to be in a position where your life pod storage and the bottom exit hatch are as close together as possible, and you have the option to interact with both by looking at them. Then quickly open up the storage, but before the locker animation finishes, exit through the bottom hatch. You'll know you've done it correctly if the PDA screen never appears to transfer items into the storage. Then when you're out exploring, the next time you open your menu, you'll see that you have access to that storage instead of seeing your normal equipment screen. You can transfer items normally, and anything you transfer here will be instantly teleported back to your life pod locker. Note that this only works for the first time you open the PDA, and to get the ghost storage back again, you'll need to repeat the exploit. But it's a fun and easy way to increase the efficiency of your first few dives. When you first craft a survival knife, the PDA will tell you that all weapons were removed from the crafting system after the tragedy on Abraxas Prime, and that means that you shouldn't have access to any firearms. That is, unless you get your hands on a propulsion cannon. If you've ever been in a sticky situation where Ted is a little bit too touch-starved and desperately needs a hug, your best bet for most players is to pull out a stasis rifle and a thermal blade and go to town. But that's tedious and takes way longer than anyone really wants it to. So instead, I present to you the Subnautica submachine gun. When you hold a propulsion cannon, the UI will give you the option to load an item from your inventory for you to move around. You can use pretty much anything for this, like acid mushrooms, scrap metal, extra titanium, etc. But you can also use the gas pods that are dropped by the gasopods when they feel threatened. These little pustules will explode when dropped in the water, dealing 185 damage to anything in their cloud. If you drop them manually, they'll explode after a short delay, which can quickly turn into you accidentally gassing yourself instead of the Reaper Leviathan you were originally targeting. But if those same gas pods are shot out of a propulsion cannon, they explode immediately on impact. With some good mechanics, you can quickly reload your propulsion cannon and send out far more damage per second than any conventional method. And with good enough aim and enough pods, you don't even need a stasis rifle to take out some of the most intimidating creatures in the game. There are two main building modes in Subnautica. The inside building mode that allows you to place interior modules and pieces like fabricators, modification stations, storages, etc., and the outside building mode that allows you to build exterior modules and pieces like floodlights, sea base components, and power transmitters. Generally speaking, you need to be inside your base to use the inside modules and outside to use the outside modules, but with one very notable exception: the alien facilities scattered around the map. These areas generally have collision with sea base pieces, and you can't build fabricators on the walls, but what you can do is place pretty much any of these standard exterior models on the floors or walls of these alien facilities. The game considers these areas to be outside because you never went through a proper transition to be inside like you do with a Cyclops or base hatch, and as such, you can grow underwater plants on an exterior grow bed in the open air. That includes a bed of creep vines, or blood kelp, or even the bubble corals, which do indeed send air bubbles through the air for you to interact with. That means you could set up a base right outside the gun facility and use the hangar bay as your own personal atrium, safe from all of the antagonists. Or you can create your own unnecessary defense system with plots full of tiger plants. Other uses are creating insane parkour maps going up various internal rooms of the facilities without touching the floor. Or you could just create a fun light show with the spotlights. No open-world game is complete without an out-of-bounds glitch, and while I already showed you one way to get out of bounds on the seafloor, this one is a bit more useful because it keeps you in the swimming state. You'll need a habitat builder and the materials to build a moon pool and some other base piece of your choice to achieve this state. Find this cave at these coordinates, and go into this tiny subsection behind the thermal vent with the 2 sandstone outcroppings. Then try to look down at the floor and get as close to the wall on your left as you possibly can, and then try and construct a moon pool. You'll know if it worked if you see the moon pool legs sticking out of the side wall on your left. Then finish constructing the moon pool all of the way, and then build any sort of compartment you want with a hatch. You want this compartment to be part of the moon pool base, and you can tell whether or not it's part of it by whether or not the piece wants to snap into a given location. If the preview is moving freely, it won't be connected to the moon pool, so try placing it closer if possible until it locks into place. Then build a hatch on your compartment and enter the habitat. Turn around and leave again, and then start spamming the unstuck button in your pause menu. It may take a few tries, but eventually it will unstuck you to the inside of your attached moon pool, letting you exit through the bottom like normal, except for your moon pool is outside the map, so are you. The advantage of being out of bounds is that you can roam around and pick up any resources you want from the seafloor, like metal salvage or stalker teeth, without having to worry about the predators in the area. You can even use this to scan the Cyclops components around the crash zone without Ted trying to give you a hug. Or, slightly more practically, you can swim straight down into the active lava zone, skipping all of the necessary progression to do it the normal way. It's still slightly slower than my first method, but at least you're slightly less likely to die in the process. Inventory management is a critical aspect of most survival crafting games, and Subnautica is no exception. In fact, Subnautica can feel even more limiting than other games due to the small size of your pockets and the large size of many items, and sometimes you won't want to sacrifice a precious vehicle upgrade slot just to get a third more pocket attached to your Seamoth. Well, what if I told you you could suddenly have infinite pocket space and all you need is a prawn suit and whatever deployable cargo bin you'd like? I find that the water storage locker and the carry-all suitcase work the best for this. Simply deploy the storage unit as you normally would, and load it up with whatever materials you'd like to bring with you. Now, normally, you aren't able to pick up the lockers once they contain items. It'll only give you the option to open the storage, and you're supposed to empty it out to have the ability to pick it up again. But if you have a prawn suit, you can temporarily unequip one of its arm upgrades to have the base hand, and that will allow you to pick up the storage locker with all of its items inside. When you check your prawn suit's integrated storage, you'll notice that the storage locker is there as an item, like it would be before you deployed it in the first place. You can transfer this into your own inventory, a locker in your Cyclops, into your Seamoth, wherever you want, and once you deploy it again, all your materials will be just as you left them. Now, you can take this through as many steps as you want, and continue nesting lockers inside lockers until you have the ultimate locker of holding. There are 16 slots inside any given locker, and the locker item only takes up 4 slots. So you can have 4 lockers nested in just one mega locker, 4 lockers nested inside that locker, 4 more lockers inside there, and continue indefinitely until you have infinite storage for wherever you want on the go. The only downside is that locker labels don't show up until you hold them in your hand to deploy, so be careful with your nesting order. Or just fill one nested locker with all of your basic needs and keep it in your storage for emergencies. Before revealing what I consider to be the most game-breaking exploit in Subnautica, here are a few honorable mentions for cool glitches and exploits that aren't necessarily as useful or funny. You can farm infinite camera drones for the scanner room by simply building a scanner room, pocketing the drones, destroying the scanner room, and rebuilding it. Repeat this until you have as many camera drones as your heart desires. Number 2, there's a cool visual glitch where you can open the Cyclops vehicle compartment and walk in the empty space. Just power down your Cyclops by removing all of the power cells, open the bulkheads on either side of the vehicle bay, park a Seamoth or prawn suit in the area where the doors should open if the Cyclops had power, then go back inside and repower your sub. The bulkheads will stay open when they would normally appear locked, allowing you to walk around and see the ocean floor clearly. And finally, you can use your Seamoth storage or upgrade screen from the safety of the inside by rapidly selecting Open Storage and then quickly entering the sub before the animation finishes. Your PDA will open, allowing you to transfer items without having to idle in the dangerous waters outside. But finally, here's what I think is the best exploit in all of Subnautica. One of the most useful exploits in Subnautica's history was the ability to hold a tool in your hand while driving the Seamoth, and that gave you the fun ability to infinitely repair your sub while taking it to places it certainly wasn't meant to go. Almost all variations of this glitch were patched out in previous versions, but there is still one consistent way to pull this off. You'll need a Seamoth, a repair tool, and most importantly, you'll need to find a time capsule. The previous version of this exploit involved opening your Seamoth's upgrades or storage bay while entering the sub, and you'll do more or less the same thing, but this time with a time capsule instead. After finding a gift left by a previous player, you'll need to enter your Seamoth right as the capsule is about to start giving you items, about halfway through its animation. After you get into the Seamoth, the animation will finish, but you'll be holding whatever item was in your hand. There's no way to swap what item is equipped, so make sure you have your repair tool in hand and your Seamoth nice and close to the capsule if you want to try this exploit. The good news is that the glitch is persistent. You could open your PDA to see what items the capsule gave you and read the lovely note that the player left for you, and your repair tool will stay ready for use when you close the menu. You can generally repair the Seamoth faster than it will take damage, but you can always increase your sustain with a hull reinforcement upgrade or two. Even better, this allows you to take your Seamoth into places it's not intended to go, like the active lava zone. Once you're there, the Sea Dragon Leviathans have no aggro on Seamoths because they're not supposed to interact with each other, so you can roam freely around and get yourself down to the final areas of the game without having to pilot your massive Cyclops through those narrow gaps. Just leave a normal Seamoth at the exit of one of those warp gates, because as soon as you exit, there's no going back the way you came. And those are 10 exploits that break Subnautica. All of the sources I used in finding these exploits are listed in the description below, so be sure to support the creative people who found these funny texts and useful exploits. Anyways, I think that's everything for me for now. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider leaving a like if you did, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. It really helps me out. I hope to see you all again soon, but until then, have a great day.